fancy, and it all goes into my database. So then when I come to the year, say 1977, I look at everything from that year, and it all comes together in a way that I would not probably have otherwise thought to do. That's how I write my books. That's not what they teach you in graduate school, but that is what I do. So this is a pretty big fat book. It's a little over 600 pages. I've got lots and lots of endnotes and index entries. In fact, the other way to look at this is a series of a little over 200 specific article length sections that I've tried to weave together. Each subsection of this book, I think, can be just taken independently and read as its own unit. So if you had a particular interest in one little thing, you could open the book and read that. But they all do work together. If you are interested in more information about this, you can go to my website, which is keyholepublishing.com. Just like looking through a keyhole, an image I've always enjoyed regarding this topic. What I tried to do in writing all books and all articles that I've done, all public appearances that I've ever done, is to try to provide a reliable guide to our past, our recent past in particular. It's long been my feeling that our past is somewhat unknown to us. And if we're going to proceed as a responsible society, we have to know our past. Much of our past exists in the form of official government documents and archives. You may not know this, but in fact, it is now widely understood that the vast majority of US government documents ever created remain completely inaccessible to you and to me. They are classified. In other words, a large, not a little, but a large majority of our own history is off limits to us. This isn't just UFOs, this is everything. We're in a very, very difficult and dangerous state when the large majority of our written documentary history is not available for us to study. There's a very serious problem with that. So what I've tried to do with the UFO topic is my part in salvaging our history. I mean, literally, that's how I look at it. I don't know how complete it is, but it's as complete as I'm able to make it. Toward that end, I've used the largest amount that I'm able to of government documents, that is, proven documents that you can't make an argument against. Journals, reliable journals, or at least in my opinion, good journals, and that includes journals by UFO investigative organizations doing on-the-spot investigations, a wide range of such journals. Various books, of course, and I've done a lot of interviews for this particular book. I actually don't know how many individuals I've interviewed, but maybe a couple of dozen, maybe 20 or 30 people directly involved in the events that are in this book. I either met with in person or did extended telephone interviews or conducted correspondence with and got their story directly. And all of it, again, trying to weave together as reliable an account as I can. I want to emphasize that everything in this book, with a couple of very specific exceptions, is verifiable data. Now, there are some exceptions. Any researcher, as I'm sure you will understand, who's been in this field long enough is going to have individuals that come up to them and say, I appreciate your work. I have this bit of information that I would like to share with you. Here it is, but you have to promise that you cannot give up my identity. I have a sensitive position, et cetera, et cetera. And that happens. That's life. It's unfortunate that it has to be that way, but there it is. Now, anytime a researcher gets that information and then repeats it, keeping the anonymity of the source, of course, it's a difficult situation because it puts you, the recipient of that information, in an unequal position. And this is something that I never, ever believe in doing. My attitude as a writer and as a communicator is that we speak as equals, so that anything that I know, you should be able to know as well. That's how it should be. That's how good history, that's how good science is done. So I try to go easy with that. I'm sometimes distressed by some researchers in this field. And I'm not really going to name names. I'm not interested in doing that today. But there are people who really do this to excess, in my opinion. Maybe they feel they have no choice. They feel like they have to get the word out. But the problem is that when you do this, you're not necessarily helping the public discourse on this. What you're doing instead is creating a lot of uncertainty about it. And so we're in a difficult position. We have what we feel are certain truths and realities that we want to communicate to the rest of the world, which we feel is in the dark and asleep. I think that's true. But we have to be aware of who we're speaking to when we engage in this kind of conversation. We have to be as responsible about this as we're able to be, and not unduly place the public's trust in what we have to say, but rather, as I've been saying, the public should be able anytime to check and verify the things that we say. Okay, enough said on that. This book really is, as I see it, three major themes that I tried to weave together. The first theme is what we might call the encounters, something of an encyclopedic account of this particular 18-year period of UFO history. So if you had an interest in the Travis Walton event, you could read about it in my book, and my hope would be that you would read the best, most concise, most complete, great account of it in roughly, I think, about 10 pages I spent on Travis Walton, that you would find anywhere. Or on the Hudson Valley wave of UFO sightings of the 1980s, ditto. Or the Hess-Dolan case in Norway. Or the Bob Lazar phenomenon in the late 1980s, or anything else that happened in that period of time. My goal was so that you could use this book as a reference and a reliable guide and know what you needed to know, learn what you needed to learn. So that was the first, and that's a lot of the book. The second major theme, though, I guess would be the politics. Obviously, there's politics in this. And so what I tried to do, again, is learn and analyze the primary military and intelligence community documents that describe this, not just those of the United States, incidentally, but trying to gain the attitude of responsible agencies from any and all nations that encountered this. The Soviet Union figures heavily in this book, as does to some extent even China, the European nations most definitely, and other countries as well. Australia, Africa, Middle East are all in here. And to the extent possible, I try to weave their take on this and their attitude in here. Attitudes of various presidents, of all the presidents, presidential policies that's relevant to the UFO phenomenon. That man in the center, of course, is David Rockefeller. He's in the book. I'll get into that in a little more in just a few minutes. The third major theme or strand of this book would be the research. In a sense, this book is a history of ufology, which is a fascinating story. In fact, of all of the things that I researched in doing this book, there were times when I felt that this, to me, was personally the most interesting. Back in the old days, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was studying history and English literature. That was my dual major. My focus in history back then was what is called intellectual history. It's kind of like the history of ideas. I've always, I've always been interested in that. And really, it occurred to me in writing this volume that the story of ufology is a part of intellectual history, without a doubt. And this is a story that I feel, in reviewing the literature, really hadn't been done in a synthesized, coherent way. And I think this book is actually a first true history of ufology. I'll come to that again in a moment. There's a backdrop involved in this book, and it's one of global transformation. You have, for example, geopolitical transformation, the breaking up of the Soviet Union by 1991 at the end of this volume. You have the birth of personal computing and even the internet before the end of this particular period. And we have throughout, I tried to look at what we might call advanced, either open or covert, cutting-edge technologies. And that image on the top there is the famous ARV, Alien Reproduction Vehicle. I think I saw Gordon Novell here in the audience. Gordon, hello, if you're there. So that, in other words, there are things in the larger world at large that affected this story, and again, tried to